This was supposed to be a year-long project, and I was supposed to finish this in December. As we can see, that didn't happen. So she is starting relatively young on that front. What am I trying to say here? I gave it 5 stars. I originally gave it 4.5, and then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, this deserves a 5-star. And it is, I don't even know how to speak about it. It's that writing style. I never quite fully gelled with it. It was fine. It made, the thing that drives me nuts about this is that it made sense. Hold on. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with the very last installment of the 12 books recommended by you. So this was supposed to be a year-long project, and I was supposed to finish this in December. As we can see, that didn't happen, but that's okay. We're going to finish it in January, hopefully. That is the goal. But I have the final 3 books to do for this vlog, and I want to start the first one of these 3 like ASAP. I just picked up the physical from my library and I'm very excited about it. And also it's the only one that doesn't have an audiobook component that I can listen to. So I want to start this as soon as possible. So I thought I'd go ahead and start the vlog now so that I can get through about half of this and come back to you. But the first book that we are going to be doing for this last installment is Any Day, there you go, Any Day with You, and it's by May Respecio. I'll figure out how to say that. It's a middle grade book. It's a contemporary middle grade. There might be, I can't remember if this one has any sort of like magical realism elements or not, but as you can see, I grabbed it from my library. It's not very long and it is middle grade, so I'm expecting to get to it relatively quickly. Also, the writing is quite large. There's a dragon on the front. That's exciting, but this is the one that was recommended. I'm going to put it up on the screen as always, but I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce it, but it's Yay? Y-A-I. From my YouTube channel. So thank you so much for this recommendation. I love a good middle grade. You guys know this. This is a story about family. We follow our main character, 12-year-old Kaya, and she loves movie making. She loves the special effects, specifically makeup elements of movie making. And so she is really, like, one of her hobbies is like putting on makeup for her friends, like putting on makeup on her friends, and like doing all these really cool short films that she's even going to be entering into a contest. And then she also loves spending time with her great-grandfather. But in this book, we discover that he has decided it's been quite a while and he wants to go back to his homeland, which is the Philippines. And so she's, of course, devastated by this news. But with his departure, there's a lot of storytelling that takes place between her family, and they all kind of like share stories of this great-grandfather. Because he did things like he was part of World War II. He was a soldier during World War II in his early years in America. So I'm sure we're going to have a lot of conversations in here about immigration and things like that, but also like family history and culture. And I'm very excited to see where this is going to go. It feels very like, plot-wise, it feels like there's not going to be a whole lot, but it's going to be an impactful story because it's about family. So I'm interested to see how this goes. I wanted to start this one because I literally just picked it up from the library today. Like I mentioned, there's no audiobook component or anything, so I have to read this physically, which is totally fine. But I would like to start this sooner rather than later so that I give myself enough time to actually dedicate my time towards this. So that's what we're doing. I'm going to start this vlog today. Hopefully, maybe later tonight, I'll start this book, and I'll come back to you when I've reached a somewhat halfway point, give you kind of my thoughts so far. I love the cover. I think it's super cute. It's definitely giving fun middle grade vibes, so I'm real excited to see how this one goes, and I'll let you know what I think. Hello. It has been a little bit of time since I talked to you last, but I actually am here because I have an update for you guys. And so that update is that I have officially finished Any Day with You. So I was planning on coming to talk to you about like possibly like the midway point. Like I was going to do a midway check-in, and then I realized that this book is super short and I might as well just finish it and then tell you all my thoughts at the end, because I didn't think they were going to end. Like I wasn't going to have very vastly different opinions. However, if I had come to you halfway through and come to you at the end, I would have had 2 different thought processes because the ending was great. So let me start this by saying I gave this book 3.5 stars. It did not quite get a full 4, but honestly, if I changed even one number in my rating system, we would have been a 4-star. So it is as close to a 4 as you could possibly get without being a 4. So what I loved about this book, well, actually, let me tell you a little bit about this book because I feel like I gave you a little bit of an understanding of what this book was about at the beginning, but now that I've read it, I actually know a lot more. So we follow our main character, Kaya, who his family has come from the Philippines. She lives with her parents, her brother, her sister, and her great-grandfather. And he is the one that kind of came over to California from the Philippines. And so he's a big storyteller, and this takes place in the summer between her 6th and 7th grade year when there's a lot of change in her life. Her sister is about to start college, and so her sister actually goes to the Philippines to her parents' hometown for like a school trip, and so she's kind of like not around, and she's used to having her sister around. And then there's also some big news with her great-grandfather, who has decided that he's going to move back to the Philippines. He is in his 90s now, and he's super healthy, but he's like, I've been here a long time, you guys are doing just fine, I want to go back to my hometown to live out the remainder of my life. And so this is a story of Kaya, who is dealing with a lot of that because she's dealing with her great-grandfather, who has always been in her house and always been in her life that she can remember, all of a sudden not being around. Her sister, who she can usually count on, not being as accessible to talk to, but also her sister is going to school to be a doctor. And so she also is having these issues of, oh, do I need to become a doctor? Because everyone is super proud of my sister for being a doctor, and they don't really say that about me. What do I need to do that? And so she's really into the special effects makeup when it comes to filmmaking. And so there's also this camp that she's at during the summer. She is doing a film. And so her 2 best friends, one of them wants to be a director and one of them wants to be an actor. So the 3 of them are in a group, and they are putting on this film or creating this film for a film festival that summer. Her entire class is doing it. And they decide to base it off of these fantastical creatures that come from Filipino history and mythology that her great-grandfather has been telling her all these stories his entire life. So you've got a lot of stuff going on with Akaya in this book, and it was so adorable. The reason why I said I would have had a vastly different opinion is because the ending was beautiful. It still didn't have like that big wow factor for me, which would have pushed it into the 4-star. Don't get me wrong, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I physically read this book, and you guys know that I do not physically read things. Now, I didn't actually have a choice, but I kind of plowed through half of this book last night when I finished it because there's something about her writing that is addictive, even in its simplicity, because this is a middle grade, it's made for younger kids, and there are definitely some moments where it was really interesting being an adult reading this book because you see where Kaya is coming from. She has a lot of thoughts and a lot of, like, we're in her head, so she's got a lot of opinions about, like, her family and, you know, like, her mom, who she doesn't feel like is emoting the right way and is not actually as sad as she is for the great-grandfather leaving, whereas, like, as an adult, you can recognize that the mom is trying to put on a brave face for her kids. And so she is definitely sad about her great-grandfather leaving, but like she knows that she can't control his life, and this is what he wants to do. And so Kaya is so focused on finding reasons for her great-grandfather to stay with them that she's not processing that this is something that he needs to do for himself. And so you watch her kind of, at least in like the last, I would say like 20 to 30 pages, really grasp that and understand what that means and what that calling you home kind of feeling is. And then she's also dealing with, you know, this thing of like, oh, I need to find something that my parents can be proud of me, even though her parents and her grandparents and everyone around her is super proud of her. It's like in her brain, she's built up this thing of like, oh, my sister's a doctor, I have to be cool like that. And so it's her kind of figuring out, not necessarily what she wants to do with her life, that is a part of it, because she is so young. Like, she's about to start 7th grade. That's pretty young to figure out what you want to do with your life. So like, it's not like she needs to decide right then and there. That's not what she's doing, but it is her way of trying to figure out what's her thing, what's she good at, what does she like to do. And this makeup, especially when it comes to special effects, especially being in California, because her father is involved in filmmaking. He is a special effects creator. Like, he's like the designer person. So he like works a lot on computers, creating special effects that way. And then her mom is a teacher, specifically a college professor that focuses on Asian and Filipino history, specifically when it comes to World War II, because her great-grandfather was in World War II. So you get to see some stories that he starts telling like her students that Kaya's never heard before because she was too young to hear them, or she doesn't process how terrible, you know, his time when the war was and all that kind of stuff. So it's very fascinating when it comes to the conversation about culture. I think that's awesome. I loved how simple that was like woven in, because like it's very easy to make a story like this where you include all of these mythical creatures and this kid who's super excited about all these stories that she's been told her entire life, and have like her classmates make fun of her because it's different. And we didn't have any of that. We had a very inclusive classroom and friend group. I mean, you still had bullies doing snickering and dumb stuff, but it was never at the detriment, I felt, of that. So I loved that. I love the exploration of her history, his history, telling stories, which is super important. And I loved the story itself. I thought it was really important, and I will definitely recommend this to so many young readers out there, because I think it is a history and a time period that, at least, I mean, it's set in current day, but like his history, the great-grandfather's history, is a time period that you probably don't see a whole lot in younger books, unless it's specifically about that war. And this one, I would say, is it's really a digestible writing style for younger readers, but the subject matter might be on the older side. So even though she's in 6th and 7th grade, I would say maybe, you know, somewhere between your 4th to 7th graders is probably where this book would lie. Just because some of the harder topics, like his time at the war, would probably go over the head of some younger readers. But this is a fantastic recommendation, I would say, even though like I did get 3.5 stars, and that sounds like a bad rating, because I know that I've been really lax on my like 3 stars is usually like a meh rating. That's not what happened here. This is still a really good book, and I'm so glad that I got recommended it. So thank you so much, because I would not have picked this up otherwise, and I feel like I definitely learned and got a lot out of this book. It just didn't have that big like wow factor that would have pushed it into the 4-star, but still amazing, and I loved it. So I finished that one, which means the second book that I'm going to be picking up for this vlog, I've actually already started, which is The Measure. And this one is by Nikki Ehrlich. I am like 20% of the way through, I think, at this point, because I did start it last night when I finished that one. I have it on audio, so I will be listening to it that way. This one was recommended by Crystal over on my YouTube, so thank you so much, Crystal, for recommending this book. I'm very excited to see what's going on. I'm fascinated by the idea of this. So this is like a sci-fi story that takes place in like present day, and it follows everybody across the globe who one day they wake up and there's these little boxes outside their door, and it's the exploration of what does this mean. And so as you learn, like as you go throughout the book a little bit, you learn that inside each box is a string, and the length of the string is suspected to be your timeline, like your lifetime. And so then it starts this conversation of like short stringers versus long stringers. And some people still don't know, like they refuse to open their boxes, so they will never know what's in them. And some people are very into wanting to know. Like some people couldn't wait and opened their box and was like, oh, this is what this means. And then what does it mean to be a short stringer versus a long stringer, and things like that. Because like if you know that you have a shorter amount of time on your life, what does that do? Are you going to start, you know, living life to the fullest? Are you going to try to do everything you can to fix that? Things like that. So it's fascinating so far. Like I said, I'm only 20% of the way through, so I have no idea where the story is going to go. I feel like it's going to be a lot of conversation on our society as a whole, because like I feel like you could replace the string thing with honestly anything and it would still have some of the same reactions, because it's a lot of people's reactions to this rather than like the science behind the short string versus long string, at least where I'm at. So we follow a bunch of different people. It takes place in a bunch of different people's perspectives. It's still third person, but we follow primarily one woman who is a journalist and her girlfriend, who have different lengths of string. And then this guy who I can't remember what his job was, but he's a short stringer as well. And so, and then you've got like this, we see the perspective of the sister of the main girl I was talking about. And then there's a politician in this book that we just got introduced to, and we see his perspective. I have a feeling we're going to see more from him. And then we randomly saw this doctor, and we see the conversation about how this short string versus long string is thought about in medicine, and like what that means with health insurance. And it's all the stuff that I never would have thought of. So I am very interested to see where it's going to go. I'll probably come back to you at halfway point, but who knows? I could be super invested and we might go to the end. So I'll come back to you when I have more of a reading update, because it's still pretty early on in the story, but I'm fascinated by this world that is our own world. The author just added some stuff to it. So I am fascinated to see what's going to happen here. But that's my next one. So I'll come back to you when I have thoughts. Hello. It is actually the next day. And I'm here to give you my final thoughts on The Measure, because I basically couldn't sleep last night for multiple reasons, but one of them was because I was obsessed with this book, and so I basically finished it in one sitting. I mean, not exactly, because I did finish like 20% before I came to you guys, and then I did listen to a couple of chapters during the day yesterday, but most of it was at night in bed. And oh my gosh, I just am kind of in awe of this book and its ability to like consume my thoughts. So I gave it 5 stars. I originally gave it 4.5, and then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, this deserves a 5-star. And it is, I don't even know how to speak about it. So this book is very hard. Basically what I told you when I came to you first to give you a synopsis of it, or what I tell you that I was reading it, that synopsis is basically stayed the same. There's not much more I can add to it because I don't want to spoil anything. But we do get it from multiple people's perspectives. And I think at the time I only had a couple of people's perspectives. When I was talking to you, we got quite a few more. Those are the main ones, I would say. The 3 that I mentioned, which I think were Ben, this female, and her girlfriend, and her sister. So maybe 4. And then we got a politician a couple of times, because he's a jerk and kind of the antagonist, if you will, of the story. He's not, but he's like represents the government body, which is the antagonist of the story. So we have him, and then we have a couple of guys that are in the military. One of them is his nephew, and then the nephew's roommate, and their conversation about the strings and everything. You could replace the strings with race, sexuality, disability, like any kind of something that like makes someone a quote-unquote minority, and the conversations and reactions I think are pretty scary accurate to what would happen, at least in America today. So that's where it was very interesting, because like it was not particularly a happy story, but it did have a very uplifting kind of end. So you didn't end going, oh God, what do I do now? It was very much like, okay, I mean, not everything was fixed, obviously, but it had a very like hopeful view of the future by the time I got to it, which like by the time I got to the end, which I really appreciated. And it's just like, this is not an easy story, because it's about like people dying basically, and knowing when you're going to die, or knowing at least your lifeline, maybe not when you're going to die, but knowing your lifeline. And then based on how long your string is, there was a few mathematicians and scientists who did some like math, and figured out like based on if your string is this length, then you will be living until you're 40, 50, whatever, you know. And then you still had people who didn't look at their boxes, and then you had some governments around the world, and some government programs, if you were involved in, that required you and basically forced you to look at your string. And then you had some people who like didn't want to look at their string, but their partner did by accident and told them. And so they were like forced, this knowledge was forced upon them. And then you had some people who like, it was just very fascinating to see like who had a long string, who had a short string, and how different people reacted to that information. So this was very character heavy, because we follow so many different people during this time. It takes place over the course of about a year. And then there's like an epilogue section, which is like several years in the future. And it kind of like wraps up the stories of the people that we have come to love. I cried basically the last like 20 to 30 pages of this book. I like sobbed in bed at like 2 a.m. About just, I mean, there was just like a lot of emotions by the end of this book. And it was so good. I didn't know this is what I needed in my life. I didn't know I was going to react the way that I did. I honestly didn't have as much hope towards this one as I did some of the other books in this series, just because the idea of this story does not appeal to me. It's sci-fi, but it's very like close to our world sci-fi, and I wasn't really sure kind of what to expect with that. And it's probably going to be my favorite in this vlog, honestly. It's one of my favorites from this series that I've done. It was so good. The one thing that I found really interesting about the writing specifically in this book is it is all third person. You are in all these different people's heads, but it is third person, and it's a little disconnected. So like at first I felt very disconnected from a lot of the story and a lot of the characters, and I was afraid that I wasn't going to really like have any emotions or feel that connection towards different people. But I think that was good for me, because this is obviously a very tough subject. It's about death and people's lives and what you do with that information, and the government and how they react to it and all that kind of stuff, all the fun things that come with that. So it's not an easy topic and not an easy subject to discuss. I think it was just done really well, while also shining a light on some issues that could arise, and drawing a lot of parallels between this fantastical kind of situation and a lot of stuff that's happening in our society today, which I thought was really interesting. And because those are really tough subjects, I think the idea of doing it in a third person was very well done. It kind of gave it this almost like a nonfiction vibe to it, where it made it feel even more real. Like this writing, I'm usually not a fan of third person, especially stories like this, because I feel like I'm not connected to the characters, and I feel like that disconnection between me and the story that's going on really hinders the plot. But because of that, it gave it that much more realistic look at I don't even know how to explain it. It was just very well done. It made the topics easier to comprehend, I guess, and it was just, I started this book thinking, oh gosh, I'm not going to enjoy this writing, and I ended this book going, oh my god, this was the best way that you could have written this. So I think at this point, this is the only book that this author has written that I can find, but I would be interested to see what other things this author comes out with, because this was just so good, and I'm genuinely surprised by how much I enjoyed it, and how much it still is. I know I finished it last night, but it stuck with me, like, to the point where, I know I read it right before bed, but last night I know I had some random dreams where the characters from these books showed up. Like, they weren't like the main point of my dream. I don't even remember what my dreams were, but I remember them being like background characters in my dreams last night. So that was very entertaining. But like, I just have this, I don't know, like I just feel very connected to them. So amazing recommendation. This turned out so well. I loved it. It was so good. With that being said, we now need to finish the final book, or now we need to start and finish the final book of this series, this vlog as well, but also this entire series. Crazy. And that's going to be The Forbidden Wish by Jessica Corey. I have read something by this author before. She did the, it was a series, there's a couple of books, but it's like a middle grade series about a magical school of music craft. And I've listened to the audiobooks, because the audiobooks are on Audible for free. So I have read stuff by this author before, but I haven't read this one. It is a YA fantasy, and this one was recommended by Jessica over on Instagram. So thank you so much, Jessica. I'm excited to see how this one goes. I am not sure what to expect with this one. I have started this one. I haven't gotten too far into it, but it's not super long. So honestly, I expect to kind of plow through this one like I have the first two, and just come to you when I finished it and give you my final thoughts on it. And honestly, I expect that to be tomorrow. Like, just based on how my reading has gone the last couple of days, this one I feel like I'm going to plow through pretty easily as well. But this story is kind of a reimagining of the story of Aladdin. I'm throwing things now. But it follows a genie or a djinn. I don't know how they're going to pronounce it in this world, but it follows a genie who had a lot of history. From what I can tell, like I said, I started it, but I haven't gotten too far into it. So from what I can tell, there's a lot of history with her, and she has some history and has done some not so great things in her past. So I'm wondering if we're going to learn about that throughout the book. But it starts with her being awoken from a lamp by Aladdin, in this world's version of the Cave of Wonders. It's not the Cave of Wonders, they call it something else, I can't remember what it is, but he basically found this ring, or stole this ring, and it led him to the desert where she was. And so she has been a genie for a very long time. It's basically a punishment based on some stuff that she has done in her past. It is written in her perspective, but she talks to this other person a lot. And from what I've gathered, it's either like the person who she was the closest with before she became a genie. It's the reason she became a genie. It's the leader of the genie. There's something there where like this person is very, very important to her. Because like she even takes the form of this person to show herself to Aladdin. So like that's the person that Aladdin and everyone else is seeing is this person that she is talking to. It's written very, very formally, so I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about that as we go through. But basically he finds this lamp. She offers 3 wishes, and he is reluctant to use them. Based on the synopsis, it sounds like she's going to fall for him, but I don't know how that's going to work. And then also, so far in the story, we've kind of really got the thing that's going to kick it into high gear is this other djinn called like a ghoul shows up, and it's like a spirit that's like does the bidding of genies or something. I don't know how it is, but like the ruler of the genies, or the guy who's in charge of all the genies or something. Basically, his son got captured, and he's offering her through this like servant person a way to no longer be a genie. He basically is like, hey, you've got a month, find my son, and if you do, great, I'll release you from being a genie and you can be like a normal person again. But if you don't, then I'll like torture you forever. So that's her whole vibe. So she's helping Aladdin as he does the things that you expect from the Disney movie, where like, you know, he finds the Jasmine character who's not named Jasmine. In this book, I've actually don't know her name, and then like does all the normal, goes to the castle, that kind of thing. The Sultan's not great, things like that. So we have all of that stuff going on, and then you've got her also trying to find this other genie that's hopefully going to get her out of this situation. So I don't know what we're getting into. Sounds interesting. The idea of this world is interesting, but the writing is kind of putting me off so far. So we'll see how I feel when I get to the end of this one. But that's my thoughts as far as the beginning. I think I'm only like a few, like maybe 20%. Again, like maybe 20-25% of the way through the book. So we're still pretty early on, but I will come back to you probably tomorrow with final thoughts on it and let you know. But this is the final book that I'm recommended by you guys, and I'm excited to see how it goes. Hi friends, 'tis me yet again to come here and tell you that I finished The Forbidden Wish. Like I mentioned yesterday, I was probably going to finish late last night / today, and I did. I finished it like, actually no, I did finish it technically last night. I was going to say I finished it early this morning, but technically I did finish it late last night. So thoughts. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars as well, and I think it comes down to kind of what I was talking about yesterday when I mentioned that I had started it, is that writing style. I never quite fully gelled with it. The weird thing about this is that it made sense for the story that was being told. With this being from the perspective of a genie or djinn that is hundreds of thousands of years old, she's going to have a much older writing style. So it makes sense that it has that very lyrical and poetic story. I mean, she is kind of taking on the role of the narrator as well in this story. And like I said, she is talking to this person, and it is this queen from long ago that she knew, and is kind of part of her origin story and why things happened to her. But the weird thing is it's in second person. So I might have said it was in third person, but it's in second person, and you, the reader, are this woman. So, but it was weird because like she would go back and forth between like first person in the sense of these things are happening to me, these are my thoughts, and then would randomly throw in a like, but you insert name of the person that she was talking about, you as like you the reader, and then she would switch into second person. And so it was like super bizarre, and those moments were very jarring, and I felt like I understood why based on what this person meant to her. And kind of like it's basically the voices in her head is the best way I can describe it, is this woman is like been in this bottle, been in this forbidden section of the world for a very long time. So she has created this like persona that she is talking to kind of like, you know, counteract going insane. So like she just like basically an imaginary friend, except for this imaginary friend is someone that she used to know, and she just kind of is talking like this person is still alive. So like I get that she needed some company, and this is the way that she did it. I don't know. It was that switching back and forth from like these things are happening to me in the present time to all of a sudden throwing in a you at the reader was really bizarre. But that was really the only issue I had with it, because I have read something from this author before, so I know that it was a stylistic choice for this book, because her other books that I've read, now they are middle grade, not YA, but they are very different writing style wise. And I think I liked those better. And like I said, this is definitely a stylistic choice of the characters and everything. But I liked the Aladdin fairy tale. I liked what she did with the original source material. You can very clearly see this isn't a reimagining in the sense of like, it is loosely based on, it's like very clear all of the parts in the story that you can kind of like line up with the original like Disney Aladdin. I'm not sure about like the original source material, because I feel like there's an original source material that Disney took, but when you think about like the Disney Aladdin, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. So there's like moments where you can like line up characters that are the same and situations that are the same, and it's just the love story is a little bit different, and then the character names are different, and some of the situations obviously are going to be different. Like we don't have like genies and jinn in this world are thought not very highly of. So like at the end of Aladdin, you know how Jafar like asks to be a genie. That's not a thing that happens because no one wants to be a genie. So it's like little things like that where there are some differences. But if you really, really like the Disney Aladdin, then I think you will really, really enjoy this one. I think I put this in my TBR like for the month as like a possible part of a series, but I'm realizing that it's a standalone, and the series is like there's a prequel novella that the author wrote that kind of like highlights a relationship and how our genie became a genie. So it's like a prequel of showing her story there. So that was fine. I did find myself spacing out at the end climactic fighting scenes. So I just don't do fighting scenes very well, is basically what I'm saying. I can't, I don't know what it was. I was listening to it on audio, and I was like playing some games. I was doing stuff with my hands, like playing games on my iPad, that are games that don't require a lot of brain power. And I was just like finding myself totally spacing out, and then coming back and being like, oh, they're still fighting. Okay. I didn't miss a whole lot. So there was like things like that it felt very YA fantasy, which is what it is. So that's totally fine. It's just not my favorite thing in the world right now. So that's kind of why I got 3.5, but I still really enjoyed my time reading it. Like I finished this in one day, which I feel like is saying something. So that is kind of some final thoughts for that one, which means now we have officially made it to the end of this TBR. the end of this project. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you'd like something similar to this in the future. I'm not sure if I would do 12 books in 12 months again, but I do like reading your recommendations. So feel free to leave some down below. Thank you so much to everyone who put in a recommendation. I'll leave the playlist linked above if you haven't seen the first 3 installments of this. But I just wanted to wrap up kind of like the series as a whole. So I had 2 3.5s and 1 5-star in this vlog, which I'm not surprised by because I put off the books that I was the least interested in. Not that I wasn't interested in them, but like out of the ones that I had here, these were the ones that I was least interested in, or ones that I would never have picked up on my own. So the fact that there are 2 3.5s does not surprise me. But overall, like the lowest rating I gave was a 3.5. So we had 3 3.5s, 4 4-stars, 1 4.5, and 4 5-stars. So the fact that we were able to get a pretty good, a higher 5-star rating in this book or in this series, I think is awesome. Which means that you guys know my reading tastes really, really well. So yay! I did it. We have come to the end of this series. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, let me know if there's anything else you'd like to recommend for me to read, and I'll do more kind of versions of this in the future. But thank you for coming along this journey with me. Sorry it took me a little bit longer than a year to do because the end of the year in 2023 was not nice to me. So we're finishing it up here instead, which is totally fine. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media as well as other fun bookish links down below. So don't forget to check all that out. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.